better place to raise a family than Monongalia County, West Virginia. And I feel that it's time where I am in my place in life, that it's time for me and my family to give back to this community that has been so good to us. It is now officially time to give back, and I'm excited to give back. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Justin. Again, I'm sorry I had Todd on the brain there, but it is Justin White, candidate for House of Delegates. So I do have a prepared statement from Delegate Amy Summers, who I said at the beginning of the broadcast was unable to join us. She writes, "Thank you so much for hosting this forum tonight. I will be unable to join tonight due to my husband's retirement. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event that he and I will celebrate together. I have a voting record that can be reviewed and will continue to fight for life, liberty, and your pursuit of the American dream. Sincerely, Amy Summers, West Virginia House Majority Leader." So that's our statement from Delegate Amy Summers. Again, she's the Majority Leader in the House currently. And so she is running for re-election to House of Delegates District 49. So again, I'd like to welcome our viewers who are watching via Facebook Live and YouTube Live and Periscope on Twitter, if you happen to be joining us that way. I apologize, we have had some disruptions. The technology has not been friendly to us tonight, and we've done our best to overcome it and do it on the fly. There are 3 members of our executive committee that are working as moderators in this meeting, and one of them had a modem crash and couldn't run the switchboard to broadcast, and the other one's internet is not strong enough to keep the feed rolling on all 3 platforms. So that is our explanation for why we're having some choppy issues with our broadcast. But you still have me. I'm still here with you all, and so you can smile and take a breath. It's as stressful for us as it is for you all, and so I apologize for all of that. But to our viewers who are watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Periscope and Twitter, please submit a question to us. We will pose those to the candidates as time allows. We welcome you there watching at home. This was an effort by our committee to be able to present to you the candidates who will be on the ballot in a non-conventional way. We know it's hard for these candidates not to be able to be out there and knocking on doors and going to the senior centers and going to the places where voters are congregating. And so as a committee with a duty to the members of the Republican Party in Monongalia County, we chose to allocate resources and to undertake this process so that we can allow these candidates to have a platform where they can speak and where they can interact with voters the best format that we can. So please, if you're watching, hit the like button, share this feed. It doesn't take very much to do so. If you're watching, please post a comment, a question. If we have time, we'll get to those questions and we'll pose those to our panelists tonight. We do have a bank of 5 previously prepared questions that we're going to present to our panelists, and it's going to be done so in just the questions have been randomized and the order of the respondents have been randomized. So my apologies if you really wanted to hear a certain candidate answer a question first. I'm sorry, but we're going to get through it the best we can. And again, the technology's been rough with us tonight, but if you're joining with Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or on Twitter, please post a comment. Please let us know you're watching, and please help us have value in this process. So our first question, just a heads up, the first question will be answered first by Mr. Zach Lemaire, who is candidate for House of Delegates District 51. Zach, I will unmute you here after I've read the question. So we have a little bit of confusion sometimes when the host unmutes and when the guest unmutes. So if our panelists would please just allow the host to unmute your mic, that would be far easier in the long run. So Zach, here's the question. In our state system, the governor prepares a budget, but the legislature finalizes and passes the budget and allocates the funds. When elected to a legislative seat, how would you address the looming burden of budget shortfalls that will result for the coming budget year and future budget years as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic and other pre-existing conditions in our state's economy? 1 second, Zach, until I have you unmuted. Go ahead, Mr. Lemaire.
Thank you, Ethan. In West Virginia, currently, we have less than 50% of eligible people working, and it's not really a good thing, which puts us in a situation where we have these budget shortfalls where we aren't getting enough revenue and we're having to run a deficit. You know, one of the things that, I will try to do to help if elected would be to incentivize businesses to expand and to come to West Virginia. This has recently been done in small portion of the state, but I want to bring it to the entire state, all 55 counties, so that we can increase the tax base. COVID-19 has, many people are saying it's not like 9/11. I was not here during 9/11 being a high school senior, but it'll bring about a new norm, and what that norm means for businesses and for people working, that we have no idea. But if elected, I want to incentivize people to work by reforming to a flat tax system instead of a graduated system. To a graduated system, it punishes people trying to become better with their lives. You might, if you're on the border of one tax bracket to another, you might be incentivized to not work as many hours so that you aren't paying more taxes. Flat system, you'll be encouraged to work as much as you want, and you'll be able to get more pay without having to pay more. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Lemaire. Our next respondent to that question will be Mr. Justin White, candidate for House of Delegates, District 51. One moment, Justin, I'll get you unmuted. And there you go.
Okay, great. This is a really great question. In looking at where we are, pre-COVID, we were already looking at about a $200 million deficit, I believe, that's been reported. And quite possibly, when COVID is over, we could be looking at the speculation of upwards of 500 million, $500 million that we're going to be in deficit. And in looking at this and trying to recover from this, some of the first options that you look at is, hey, do we raise taxes or do we cut programs? Well, one of the problems that we're faced with is cutting programs in West Virginia is not easily done. And when we put on top of that, with being in quarantine, we've already seen lowering severance taxes, but we've seen even worse severance tax reports. Income taxes have been reduced, as well as our sales taxes have been reduced. So when we kind of look at the first two solutions, do we raise taxes? Do we cut programs? Well, cutting programs in the state of West Virginia is not easy. At 65% are mandated programs. We can't cut them. The other 35%, the number one thing in that area is higher education. They're already reeling from the effects of funding issues. And the problems below that, or the programs below that, are also important programs. Raising taxes, that's not going to help the scenario. I strongly feel that raising taxes to try to fill that deficit is going to have a negative impact on everyone. It's going to negatively affect Monongalians, West Virginians, and it's negatively going to impact our economy. And speaking with some people in Charleston, as well as economists, I think the consensus of what's really going to drive the economy and help return the deficit back to a balance is we need to look at the $1.25 billion in federal stimulus money that's been granted to West Virginia. And we need to work with our governor, to work with lobbying Congress to allow us to allocate a portion of that money to small businesses in West Virginia. Small businesses in West Virginia are the economic engine of West Virginia. We have 135 to 136,000 small businesses, and most of those small businesses have 5 employees or less. And a lot of those small businesses did not have the resources or the availability to take advantage of the payroll protection stimulus funds. So predominantly, we would like to see money back into the hands of those small businesses so they remain intact with their employees. If they've had to lay them off, they get them back to work. They get back to making their product. They get back to providing their services to their communities. This is not the end-all answer, but it is a first short-term solution, but it is a step in the right direction of putting money directly back into our West Virginia economy and stimulate the economy and getting people back to work. And again, the first step in addressing the burden that we're faced with.
Well, very good. Thank you, Justin. Next up for that question will be Joe Statler. Give me 1 minute, Joe, to get switched over here to you. Okay, Joe, go ahead. You have the floor.
This is a very unique question that you've give to us tonight, because we're in a situation that nobody could have predicted and seen this coming to us. And the shortfalls that we're seeing, as Mr. White pointed out, are quite drastic. Where we're looking at some shortfalls before this kicked in, and after it kicked in, it's really terrible. The one thing that we have going into this is the law requires us to have a balanced budget. So we're looking at going into the last quarter of this year far under what we were going to have. So to make that budget balance out by the end of the year, it means a couple things. One is you look at raising taxes, and that's not going to be the answer now. How do you raise taxes on an economy that's already shut down to nothing? You'd almost be impossible to do, because taking nothing from nothing is going to give you nothing at most times. The other thing that I think you would have to do is on this process is the legislature has to be called back into session to look at some of the things that you can do. You can look at the rainy day fund. That also is not a good option to do. It's pretty much the last thing that you want to do in anything out there is to go into that rainy day fund, because it is for these types of protections, but you want to be careful and keep that rainy day fund up so that your ratings on bond issues and everything else the state goes by stays at a good rating. The next option is, as Mr. White also pointed out, is to look at cutting. So what do you cut in an area that is already devastated in some things that people was working fine? They was bringing home a great paycheck every day. Businesses is shut down. Business was putting money in. People were spending money. The sales tax was booming along. So what do you look at cutting when people are already suffering? That's going to be another tough issue that you have to look at. And how do you overcome that? So where we're at today is going to be a very, very unique situation that we hope we never see again. More than likely, we're going to see it in at least the first quarter, possibly to the first half of the next budget year. So that's going to entail that also. I will say that some things you've got to look, and I hope that the governor's already instructed his staff to do that, is to look within the system and where is there spending that we can look at and see if it's necessary that we spend it now, or can we defer that to a later time, a later date, and do those types of things, just like you would do in your household budget. When it becomes tight, then you look at what you critically have to have and what you may just want and can no longer afford. And I see that I'm getting this running short, so I'll cut it there.
Thank you, Joe. Our next respondent will be Mr. Todd Stainbrook. Go ahead, Todd, you have the floor.
Thank you for the question. And yes, this was a tough question at this point in time in our state. It's kind of hard to follow up last with everything that everybody else has said, but I do have a couple other suggestions. And number one, it's just a tough answer period to answer at this point in time. DC is changing things on a minute by minute basis. Yes, we have 1.25 billion allocated to us at this point. That could change tomorrow. What our incoming revenue is at this point in time could change tomorrow. Finding out when this will all end for our state is going to make a big difference as to what reaction we should have. What state representatives do we have pushing for us in Washington, D.C. to be allocated more money? And, you know, you hate to be one that is in a position to have to ask for that money, but the state of West Virginia didn't ask for this coronavirus to show up here. We didn't ask for our shut to be, or the constituents didn't ask for our state to be shut down. We have to do what it is that we have to do in order to get as much funding in this state as possible from the federal government. I think that's priority number one. At least that way we can have something to work with in order to balance a budget. Because right now we have no idea what we are going to have. So it's a difficult question to answer. I don't think anybody really has a great answer, only for the fact that nobody knows. No one knows what to do right now. And yet you hate to say it's a waiting game, but in reality, that's what it is. Until we find out what revenue is in, until we find out what federal money we actually are going to get, it is a waiting game. We can try to cut anything we want. We definitely don't want to raise taxes, but we need to push and do everything we can to get as much funding into the state and then go from there. Thank you.
And thank you, Todd. Our next respondent will be Mr. Provins, followed by Mrs. Polis. So, Mr. Provins, 1 minute. Okay, I've got you unmuted. You have the floor. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks a whole lot. It's very obvious that there's going to have to be some tough decisions made, at least in the short term. We'll be put in a position where you've either got the money or you don't. So there will have to be savings looked at. In West Virginia, raising taxes, like everybody else said, is just not a possibility. So, you know, across the board, we're talking about West Virginians here. We saw how everybody came together and went after the virus and made us number one in the nation on something good. So we can tighten up and we can get through this. But also this terrible crisis has it's the lemonade theory. West Virginia here has opportunities now that are more obvious than they were before. Geographically, we're located in the center of the eastern United States. So there's going to be some of these corporations that were in these crowded cities that have suffered severely from this crisis that are going to be looking for new ways to do business. And West Virginia is that opportunity. We are going to have to work on our infrastructure, our roads, our internet, and everything like that to accommodate them. But again, there's opportunity. In any business you're in the world, or in the country, or you look at your market, and your competition is who you go after to grow your business. And again, this has given West Virginia an extreme opportunity. I'll ask you, if they can build it in China, we can build it here. We used to have garment factories and glass factories and all that. And the great thing about it, West Virginia is situated to compete with China. We're one of the most friendly atmospheres as far as cost wise. And again, we are situated in the middle of everything in the eastern United States. So even though we're going to have to go through some hard times, and I'm not one of the fellows in Charleston right now going to have to make the immediate decisions, and bless their heart and God be with them, but we'll do it. Hopefully we will get our share of this federal money and help out our small businesses. But we've got to look at raising revenue. Whether this would have happened or not, the answer to our problems is raising revenue. And our opportunity is, I see I'm about done. Our opportunity is looking for competitions and manufacturing that we can bring in. Our opportunity is in rare earth metals that 95% of China manufactures. And our opportunity is all the travelers that are going to be looking for a place to go this summer and afraid of, say, the beaches and things like that. We've got West Virginia to offer, where they can come to the mountains and do some vacationing in solitude. Let's bring some of those cars off the interstate and get them to spend some money.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much, folks.
We appreciate your response. Next up is Rebecca Polis answering the same question. And go ahead, Mrs. Polis.
Well, we don't know all the ramifications of this problem that we're having for sure. We can tell that it has given us a good clue as to, in the future, It's like in your home. Wow, I didn't expect that problem. I'm going to have a short-term savings in the future. Or in other words, it's indicated to us we've got to have greater preparation in the future for whatever may come. Also is in the home, when we've had a problem, something breaks down, the refrigerator, the car, whatever it was. Number one, you look to see what you can cut back. So in West Virginia, what is less noticeable, that doesn't jar the people, but less noticeable, less needed, that we can trim back on. Number two, yes, we need to increase the revenue. And I think that, excuse me, I think that West Virginians are creative people. And I think we need to give them a chance to show that creativity. All you need to do is go to Tamarack. Oh my gosh, the beautiful, I've traveled many places, but I don't know that I've ever seen as beautiful woodworking, beautiful leather as they do right here, and beautiful pottery, glasswork as they do right here in West Virginia. We have so much to offer. And I think that we need to advertise, we need to market all of that more. I think as well, we need to watch out constantly just giving to people who are, yes, they may be living tight right now, but if you lavish giving upon people, and I have to say this because I've lived tight many times in my life, and it caused me, because I didn't have anybody to give to me, it caused me to dig. It caused me to look to see how I could become creative. What could I do? And so I think that if we just carte blanche, just give to everybody all the time, as we are prone to do. And I'm not talking about areas where there's really need, but it takes away people's incentive to work, which then has its own set of problems, like the loss of self-respect in the long run, and then role modeling that to the next generation. So what can we do? Number one, let's trim where we can, where it's less noticeable. Number two, let's see if we can't market, once again, the great abilities that we do have here in West Virginia. I liked what Mr. Providence says. We have a lot to offer. We've done great things before, and we need to generate that concept and those values to people once again. And so we need to look for ways for raising the income in those ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Polis. We appreciate your time answering that question. Next up will be Senator Randy Smith, and then to wrap up will be Elijah Dean. So Senator Smith first, and then Elijah Dean. Senator Smith, 1 second while I unmute here for you. Go ahead, Senator Smith, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. This isn't new waters to me. When I first became the senator 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, the state of West Virginia was in a $500 million deficit at that time. And under Republican leadership, we made some really tough, hard decisions, which sometimes for politicians is hard to do. Because I'll tell you, this isn't for the weak of heart. We went in and we cut the fat from the budget, which we're going to have to do again. We've had the last about 3 years, of good revenue reports, or excessive revenue coming in, and we've added budget. We're a population of approximately 1.8 million in West Virginia, but our budget seems to keep on going up, and being fiscally conservative, that has always worried me. So going forward, this isn't nothing new for the Republican leadership in Charleston, because like I said, we was faced a $500 million, and the big difference is this time that we have the federal government, because it's a nationwide problem. We're going to have some help from the our national leaders, which is a good thing. But we need to get where we don't depend on, we're West Virginians, and we don't need to get where we depend on the federal government sort of bailing us out all the time, or for the welfare. We've got to cut the fat on the budget, just like every citizen in West Virginia just about is going to have to make cuts to their budget with this pandemic going on. So it's not unachievable. We've been there before, and it's just going to take some tough decisions. And, we have to keep the programs in place that are essential to our citizens in West Virginia. But on some of these that we've increased over the last 3 or 4 years, because we had the money to do that, we're going to have to, tighten our belts and use a common sense approach to it. And, we'll make West Virginia great again, which I'm not saying it's not great now, but this isn't uncharted waters for, the Republican leadership in West Virginia, because we've really, we've had to tighten our belts before, and we've had to make some really tough decisions. And this isn't for the faint of heart, because, you're going to be ridiculed for the decisions you made. But I think everyone will agree over the last 3 or 4 years that it showed our success, and we did not raise the taxes. We did this all by, increasing our business climate, helping our small businesses out, and helping West Virginia prosper. So, I look forward to the challenge to do it again.
Very good, and thank you. Thank you, Randy. We appreciate your time answering that question. Next up and last for this question is Elijah Dean, candidate running for Senate District 2. Mr. Dean, you have the floor.
Yes, I'm not going to try to come up with any new things that we can do, because all the candidates had very, very good ideas. The last thing we need to do is raise taxes. So we'll just get that out in the open. And, we need to look at the federal stimulus money and see where we can offset the shortfalls. That was mentioned also, and reduce spending. In the legislature, there's going to be some difficult choices to make. And we need people down there that aren't really worried about their political careers. They're worried about the people in this state. We need leaders down there that have a sense of urgency to work for the people. Don't be afraid to cut something. If something needs cut, if it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, hey, we need to cut that. Just like Senator Smith mentioned, it can be done. We can cut the fat. We can tighten up. I'm a coal miner, and I've been laid off a couple times, and I know what it's like to not have the money that we used to have. And you're going to have to tighten up. We're going to have to make allowances, do things to save as much money as we can, and live frugally. We as a state, we're in this time. We have this pandemic on us, and we are going to have to make some changes. And so everything that candidates have said, it's great, reduce spending. And, another thing that we might be able to do is delay implementing programs that might be set up to come in to the state and starting. If we can just delay them maybe a year until we get back on our feet, get through this pandemic. And, we have a population decline, and now's not the time to be increasing our government. If the population is leaving, we need to make sure our government matches our population. And so anywhere we can make a cut, don't raise taxes, check out the federal stimulus and see how it can offset. And I think we as West Virginians, we're very resilient. We go through hard times, we bounce right back. So we can do that as a state. We can do that in the legislature. And I think if we just had leaders down there, people that are willing to fight for the people, do the right thing for the people, we'll get it done. And so that's what I think we could do to go through this crisis.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. My name's Kyle McAvoy. For those that didn't catch me early on, we had some technical difficulties, so we missed some introductions, I believe myself included. I'm the vice chair of the committee. I'm going to take the next round of questions. I'm going to mention too, because we had some technical difficulties in the beginning, we're running, even short on time from the already jam-packed schedule we had. So if everybody can try to keep their answers as brief or as let's issue some brevity here with these questions and go forward. If you see me pop up, just remember that that's kind of a cue for time. I'm going to read the next question, and we'll start off with Mr. Statler. The question is, the voters of every district are demanding improvements to our crumbling roads and crucial infrastructure. When elected to the seat you're seeking, what could you do as a legislature to improve road conditions and infrastructure? Give me just a moment and I will unmute you. Joe, you should be.
The first thing I will say is there's no doubt about it that 90% of the concerns that is given to you from your constituencies or anywhere you go across state, and I don't care if you go to a grocery store, you go to church, you go to meetings, where you're at, even in your family, the first thing that will pop up will be a question about the roads. When are we going to do something to fix the roads? I will say that I did have the opportunity to serve with my good friend Randy Smith, and I would like to see Randy's dreams become a reality down there, because part of it is looking at how the allocation of the money is across the state. In areas as this is in the north central West Virginia area, our roads are much heavier used than they are in some of the other areas of the state. But still yet the formula, in my opinion, lags behind. I do know that my good friend Brian Kerchaba, when he was serving, had a funding formula that he tried to put forward that I carried on. I tried to put forward, and even John Williams tried to put that forward. And it gets stonewalled by the DOH. They don't want to allow that legislation to come in, or the governor. And their fears is, you know, they don't have the control over some of the monies that they would have. But it simply needs looked at as to where we're placing our dollars, and are we putting it to where it's most critically needed. The next thing is, I will tell you that as legislators, you set up policy to try and correct these situations. And even on the hiring shortages, and it takes so long to hire people, we've tried to work that to make sure that we can streamline that process. So the next thing that you have to go to, you have to build a working relationship with your DOH representatives at the district level and at the county levels, to where you can work with them and point out the problem areas that your constituents are bringing to you. Now, they don't have to do anything to take care of that situation, but I will tell you that more times than not, if it's a credible issue, they will at least go out and take the looks at it and try to schedule what they can do to repair those roads and get them moving. Is it a perfect answer? No. In a short time period, I will tell you, I could have a PhD in engineering on what I've learned about roads in the process while I was in the legislature, and also afterwards on the committees I served on. And I will keep it short at that.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer. Real quick reminder, I'd like to thank everyone that's watching on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. I know we've gotten a few questions in the comments. We will get to them before we move, or before we wrap up, but we're going to continue with this first round of questions first. I'm going to go ahead and move on to Mr. White. Let me unmute you there. All right, you should be on. If you need me to repeat the question, just let me know.
Okay, no, that's fine. As Mr. Sadler has pointed out, this is it's a complex problem, but it's a problem that we're all faced with, that we all deal with. And I think we can kind of all agree that the current way that we're doing things has not been quite as effective as we would all like to see. And I think at some point in time, we're going to actually have to start thinking a little out of the box and start having to think a little bit more progressively. And one of the reasons I say this is I was approached by a community member who had taken it on their own call to action to start researching into potholes and how technology can be used to enhance the repairing of potholes. And that brought him to a test pilot program in Memphis, Tennessee, with the company MCREC that also works with Google. And he was very fascinated and very impressed with this technology. And he reached out to me, knowing I was running for office, and asked if I'd be willing to sit in on the meetings and start learning about what Memphis, Tennessee has been doing. They have similar weather problems or weather patterns that we do, and have the same road problems that we have. So I was very intrigued by this, and I have had several meetings with John Stadowski, that's a community member that's brought this to my attention. Was able to have afforded the opportunity to sit with in a meeting with MCREC and Google and learn about this artificial technology, or mechanical learning technology. And it uses resources that we already have. And it's quite impressive. The equipment is attached to our city buses, and it can actually in real road time analyze the potholes, the size, the shape, the depth. And I know this all sounds crazy, but once you actually see how it works, it's rather impressive. But this information goes back to a central database, and then the output is a work order. So here's where we get to where the effectiveness is. If you can manage that type of technology, then what the output is a work order that reduces the amount of people on time assessing what we're doing and gets us back to repairing the potholes in a more efficient manner. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is a solution, but what I am suggesting is for potholes, we're gonna have to start thinking progressively, and we're gonna have to start looking at alternative solutions. And I think looking at what Memphis, Tennessee has accomplished with this technology with Google and ML Spring, and the fact that we have a tier 1 college right here in our community, if any community could make technology like this work to improve something like this, I think it's worth at least something to vet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time there. We're going to move right along to Mr. Stainbrook. Let me go ahead and unmute you. I believe you should be good to go.
Thank you for the great question. And Mr. White, just to let you know, I like the thought of the advanced technology. I think that's great. Having that connection is wonderful. I have a little bit of a different view of this from conversations that I've had with DOH managers, specifically in District 4. I've come to a conclusion that communication between DOH and Charleston needs to improve by tenfold pretty easily. Another problem the DOH faces is trying to compete in the job market for these employees. We're running shy on workers. You know, you can have 10 potholes, but if you got one guy filling them, how long does it take for him to fill them? And of course, I wish that was the only issue that we had, but we cannot compete against the entire state for a workforce. The DOH hires guys on a tier level. So if you have a guy that's going to come in and work labor, he's going to make starting out $11.91 an hour. An operator 2, who's required to have a CDL license, starts out at $13.95 an hour. A guy that is an operator 3, who's required to have a CDL, also required to be able to work heavy machinery, is going to start out at $19.13 an hour. Now, I'm sure we all know, I mean, there are several industries that these guys can go to with a CDL license and make more than $13.95 an hour. What entices them to want to deal with the troubles with the state and work for us on call 24 hours a day? We need to entice guys to come here to the state. I have a friend of mine that his son works for the DOH. Now, as I told you, operator 2 starts out at this point in time at $13.95 an hour. My friend's son has been working for the DOH for almost 2 years, gone through the program, got a CDL license, and makes $11.75 an hour. He's an operator 2 making $11.75 an hour. I'm pretty sure with the experience he has, he can go to McDonald's and get that kind of pay and have a lot less stress. So I think that if we start off by streamlining the DOH to where communication isn't going to be such a problem, start questioning the funds that are allocated through the budget and how they're being spent. Once the workers start to flow the way that it should, let's start working in for our infrastructure, the broadband system, so that way we can be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I don't think it's a difficult question, but I think we need to get to the root of the problem, talk to the people in the trenches, and start coming up with solutions there. And then I think the rest of it will fall into place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to keep moving right along here. We're going to go on to Zach Lemaire. And you should be good to go.
Thank you, Kyle. Like Todd said, Justin, I appreciate, being a member of the youth, I appreciate the use of this alternative advanced technology. I believe this is something that is worth looking into, and we should. One of the issues we have is, we have a $16 billion budget here. That's our entire budget here in the state. That was mentioned by Governor Jim Justice in his recent State of the State address. There are federal departments on the federal level and on other places in other states that have more funding than our entire budget. So, we're a little pressed for cash as it is, being we're about 1.8 million people and less than 50% of the people are working. One of the things that we got to look with is, yes, the DOH might be all hissy, and get upset about the thing that Mr. Statler was saying. Excuse me. But our job as legislators is to provide oversight into the executive, first and foremost. And we have to be willing to allocate these resources in a timely manner. But we also have to work with the DOH at the state level, at the district, and at the county level, because it takes people working on many sides and many issues of the spectrum to enact effective solutions. And, we can work with putting up broadband. While we're working on the roads, we could tie in these broadband lines, which will save time and save money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to move right along here. We're going to move on to, excuse me, just a moment here. Okay, we're going to move right on to Rebecca Paulus. Let me unmute you there.
Thank you. Well, I'd want to familiarize myself with the prioritized list of the road locations to be prepared. And I believe there is a list, because I just saw the other day where 125 million had been allocated to a list of over 40 jobs in various counties. And so where are we now in the process of the list of places that need to be repaired? And I realize there's over 38,000 miles of road to maintain, that there are hindrances, there's money, there's skilled laborers, there's state codes that make it difficult sometimes, federal codes, there's winter weather, and now there's the pandemic that no one expected, that caused the road workers to be shut down for several weeks. So what's going to need to be taking place now as we're moving into summer, and the roads have experienced the hardship of winter, and so there's ditching to be done, and paving and patching and ditching trees, etc. So how can we get to a fast track? And I'd want to acquaint myself with the division of highways, especially in Mon and Marion counties, so that I can serve the people there. Oftentimes there's accountability that can be brought into a position that can cause things to function a little quicker. And then the broadband is of great necessity for both education and economy. The pandemic has certainly shown us the necessity of having broadband, where the students are concerned. Some of the parents have had to drive to locations to pick up internet so children could do their work. I went online and I counted approximately 12 counties in West Virginia that have an internet coverage lower than 50%. So that really needs to, it's got to be an emphasis in the days to come, a greater emphasis. As well, West Virginia businesses need good coverage for the sake of communication, and it's a major consideration for any business wanting to locate here. So I'm really new at learning anything about broadband and being a techie-minded person. But I read, the 4 kinds of broadbands, the DSL, the cable, the fiber optic, and then the satellite, the pros and cons of them. But I noticed, for instance, at the risk of sounding absolutely ignorant and not knowing anything and being new at all this, but I noticed that there were 7 of those counties that were below 50% coverage. I'm wondering if there was a way we could clump those together in a way of incentivizing a company to come and work those 7 counties. And whether it would be DSL, whether it would be fiber optic or cable, but it would be good for them and it would be good for us if we could say, hey, we've got 7 counties here. Let's bring you in and let's try to expand, this and bring an increase to you and to us at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to briefly mention again that we're really running up for time. So if you see me pop in the corner, please try to wrap up. We're going to move right along to Mr. Proppins.
Thank you. Communication efficiency and technology. I would like to go into those a little bit more, but like I said, we're trying to cut short. The time it takes for the problem to happen and get reported, and this is, it looks like there's going to be a lot of time spent with the regional DOH offices to make sure that they know what the problems are and the areas of our problems in our districts. Technology comes into play, like the fellow said. We spend money over and over and over and over and over fixing the same spot, and we keep using the same technology to fix that spot. So more study needs done there, and it has been done. So there is some better ideas. The screen went blank on me there. Are we still okay? Okay. The infrastructure, if we're going to bring new business into this area, again, this crisis has shown us that there's a lot of things that can be done remotely, and that means they don't have to be done in New York or Washington, D.C. or Baltimore or Pittsburgh, that you can come to West Virginia and do that. Technology is also what we were looking at to expand the internet 5 years ago. That's not the same technology we're looking at now. We need the backbone of the fiber optics finished in West Virginia so we can get the cell towers up in the proper locations, so we're prepared for the 5G. The 5G is going to be one of the things that's going to bring high-speed broadband to the populace at the lowest cost. When it comes to roads, again, it's an ongoing problem. So there's so many things that we have to do that. I would be glad to work at it. I've actually filled potholes myself in my life. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're going to keep moving right along here. We're going to move on to Mr. Dean.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Yes, just to be quick, in and of myself, if I'm elected as state senate for District 2, I can't do much by myself. But what I can do is be a squeaky wheel. My dad always said the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Senator Randy Smith, he has that dream. He's put that bill out there. And can you imagine if the senators from District 2, 13, and 14, this northern part of the state here, all got together, went down to Charleston, worked together, made allies, and the House of Delegates also in this district went down there as a force to demand that we get our roads fixed. That dream of Senator Smith's, it calls for a mandate of the maintenance on these roads. We can start ditching our roads again. I remember as a young child living up in the country, they'd come up and they have this big grader and they ditch our roads and they would last a lot longer. If you can't keep the water off the roads, there's going to be potholes. There's going to be potholes. And so, there's things we can do, but we have to get that bill passed. We have to get the governor to sign Randy's dream and start mandating the maintenance of our roads, cutting back the trees, keeping the water off the roads, keeping the ditches clean. That right there will start to show the people progress in our road system. It's not a quick fix. We just can't go through and just fix all these roads, but there needs to be progress that the people can see. And little by little, we can start working on these roads. And I think that's what we can do for the roads. And in the broadband accessibility, that's a touchy subject for me. Maybe a little bit later we can go into that, but that is something definitely that our state needs to focus on, because no company in their right mind is going to come to this state if they can't have internet. You know, no company's going to try to run a business without the internet. So we have to focus on these issues, and it'll not only help people personally, but it'll help the businesses expand in this state. Thanks.
All right, thank you. We're gonna move right along here. The last person to respond to this question, that should be Mr. Smith. Let me go ahead and get you. You should be good to go. Thank you.
Thank you. This is one subject I could talk on all night. I think most people knows that there have been no one that has been more vocal on the road conditions in our district than what I have. Several of them, a couple of people mentioned the Randy's Dream, which was a good bill, which didn't have a whole lot of funding in it because we couldn't get the governor on board with the funding or the House at the time, but it did have accountability and mandates and transparency. And without those three, we're not going to solve our road problems, because the agency has to be held accountable to make sure that what needs done is being done. And mandates, they have to have mandates for the bill I had required 70% of the core maintenance done every year, which isn't unreasonable. And transparency, where the average citizen can get on the web page, see what roads are being fixed, what roads are to be fixed, who fixed them, how much it cost, total transparency. And that's a must. And the Randy's Dream, it was dubbed Randy's Dream. It was all of West Virginia's dream, basically, but it passed Senate 34-0, and then went to the House, passed 98-0, and with 2 members missing, and then the governor vetoed it. And we was told the reason he vetoed it was because it took too much power away from the governor's office, where it had too many mandates that they had to require that. And without mandates, we're not going to get. And then we mentioned technology. There's a lot of technology out there as a state that we don't use. And I have in District 14, I have 4 highway districts in my district, and District 4, which has Mon, Preston, and Taylor in it, is by far where I get probably 95% of my complaints is from District 4. Now they have got better, but it's still, you go to Tucker County, my home county, Tucker County, the roads up there are, I never get a complaint from Tucker County, Grant County, Hardy County, and everybody said, well, the winters are harder in your, Preston Mon area. But if anybody's been to Tucker County, that's not true, or Pocahontas County or Randolph County, which don't have the road problems that we do in District 4. So a lot of it is a District 4 problem. I've said that all along. So, until we get the accountability, mandates, and transparency in there, we're not going to we're not going to tackle this problem. I mean, we definitely need more funding, but we're not utilizing our funding to the fullest extent. And with my two main objectives since I've been down there has been broadband and roads. And I preach broadband and roads because without broadband, we're not going to excel economically or educationally. We have to have broadband in this state for our economic situation, to draw in new businesses. We have to become a leader in that to expand businesses. And educationally, it puts it at us at a disadvantage in this day and age. People depend on the internet. So
thanks, Randy. Thank you very much. And you're absolutely right about that. I'm going to jump in here and take over for Kyle, because we're going to move on to question 3 now. And we'll begin with Elijah on this question. When elected to your legislative seat, what actions could you take as a legislator to pass laws that would serve to improve West Virginia's business climate and attract lucrative new businesses to our state? Elijah, hold on. There you go.
Thank you. Yes, we need to work on high-speed internet access. I think that is the #1 thing that could really affect our economy, really affect the business climate here. And, if you're not aware, Senate District 2, it includes part of Monongalia, part of Marion, part of Gilmer, and part of Marshall, and then all of Wetzel, Tyler, Ritchie, Calhoun, and Doddridge. And so down in those counties and even parts of Mon, you know, there's places that people just cannot get high-speed internet. And, you know, there might be empty buildings. For instance, down in Tyler County, there's empty buildings that a business could move into. But if they don't have the high-speed internet access, I mean, we're living in 2020. And that is just something that has to happen. And so, you know, when elected, that will be one of my main things, is to try to work on the high-speed internet. I know I'm kind of parakeeting Senator Smith, but our districts are very similar and they have the same needs. And I would rally with him. I would go with him and, you know, align myself and work together with senators like that can understand the needs that we have. And I think that if we can help the people individually and the businesses get high-speed internet access, that will do nothing but help our economy. And I think that's something that's attainable. You know, Wetzel County and Tyler County, they have worked together and have reached out to the high-speed internet access company, and they're starting to run lines. You know, maybe we need to go to the county level and work with these counties to try to get them to take on these initiatives to get the broadband there. So, you know, if elected, that's what I would focus on, you know, to help our business economy. And then after that, you know, other things will come in line, but that would be my number one priority when elected.
Thank you, Elijah. Rebecca, do you need me to read the question again? Hold on. Sorry, Rebecca.
That's
Would you like
okay.
me to read the question again?
No, I'm good. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Number one, we need to check into laws that hinder people from bringing their businesses here. For example, the business inventory tax, which I know we are so dependent upon right now. But if we could begin to reduce that incrementally and let people in other places know that that's happening, I think that it would give them an incentive to bring their businesses here. In fact, if we could just give them a really reduced business tax for like the first year or 2 years that they came in, then I think that would really be a good incentive for them to come. All right, number two, I like what Elijah said. We need that broadband. I think that this is such a beautiful state. We have over 50 beautiful parks and recreation areas. There's so much that could be done with tourism. I know we have a marketing strategy. It might need to be amplified. It might need to be increased. People need to know that, wow, West Virginia is the place to spend my time. I don't need to go to the beach. I can do it all right here. And then something else that's really on my heart is that I believe that increase could come through farming that would coincide then with production and manufacturing. I was really amazed when I talked to Commissioner Leonhardt recently, and I learned of all of the farming that is done in this state. I had no idea we produce so much poultry, so many things. So I think we could amplify. We need to market and make known how great a state West Virginia is, and that there's plenty of opportunity here for people to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And next up is Mr. Probbins. Give me 1 minute. There you go.
The laws like the inventory tax are something that we need to look at, but at the same time, we're like she said, incrementally lowering those. We're going to have to bring in some new business and some other innovative ideas to replace those taxes in the places that money's going on now, and it really needs to be. This is again our opportunity, folks. Our best way to solve problems is to up the revenue, and with our infrastructure in place and everything, we can do that. The other thing that I've talked to a lot of businesses about and they're concerned about is lawsuit caps. A contractor has his label on the side of his truck and there's a little fender bender. And before it's over with, that lawsuit winds up costing his company and his insurance company maybe $100,000 when it was an everyday accident. So there's a real problem and a real concern with the businesses, especially the small businesses, and paying the insurance it takes to cover things like that. That was brought to my attention more than once. And again, the tourism. That's something that overnight, I've actually, even though my background was in electrical and industry and manufacturing, all that, the last 10 years I've spent in the tourism industry. As a matter of fact, last year I was chosen as the West Virginia Professional of the Year in tourism because of some of the ideas I was coming up with to bring people in. Our interstates are a great marketing tool here. We need more of those billboards that say, stop and do more than just fill your tanks. We can do more to empty their wallets for sure. A lot of things when they're going to stop and they're going to enjoy themselves and see a little bit more of the Canadians that are traveling back and forth, the New Yorkers that are traveling back and forth, they might start staying, hey, let's spend a couple days in West Virginia next year. So pushing more on the tourism, using the interstates and the billboards to stay more of stop and see what we've got here. Enjoy West Virginia. That's how we can grow quickly and have some longevity to it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Probbins. And we are asking the question, how would you serve to improve West Virginia's business climate and attract lucrative new businesses to our state? And next up is Randy Smith. Randy, you are unmuted, I believe.
All right, thank you. I'll try to be brief this time. I got on kind of a rant on the roads, but you know, going forward, coming out of the COVID-19 situation, we're going to have to really look at tort reform because it's going to open up our businesses to lawsuits. And, you know, we need to address that before it gets out of hand. And that's going to be a big thing for the businesses. And I believe if we go back in spatialization, that's one thing we should look at is some sort of protection for businesses. And Rebecca mentioned the business and inventory tax. It's, you know, for us to be a game player in the manufacturing field, we have to do something with the business and inventory tax. Broadband, I've already touched on that. Broadband's important because, you know, with the worldwide market and nationwide market, the broadband is more important now than it's ever been for businesses. And last but not least, we have to elect true conservatives that are business minded and less taxes, more business, and not rhinos. You know, in West Virginia, we're come to the point where a lot of people are leaning liberal or have realized that they can't get elected with a D by their name, so they're switching to the Republican Party to get elected, but bringing their liberal views to the business part of it, and well, just everything. So we have to, the voters need to look at these candidates, see who's endorsing them, who's supporting them, and ask the tough questions about where they stand on the tough issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Next up is Todd Stainbrook. Give me a second, Todd, and go.
Thank you, young lady. Well, I think everybody has come up with some really good suggestions. Amazing that you guys are doing great. Great ideas. I'm not going to say our state is perfect, but from my experience, we seem to be extremely business friendly. Go to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and try to open a business, and you'll find out how friendly we are. I think we need to do more, whatever is necessary as far as to increase our ability to draw in businesses. The broadband is a big thing. Any affordable tax cuts that we're able to do them. Let's get as many Mountaineers working as possible. The biggest problem that I see is not on the state level, though. I think we have more of a local issue. You know, you have your county that a business has to deal with, and you have a city that they have to deal with if they're within those limits. Here in Mon County, our county is great. They are very business oriented. God forbid if you try to open up a business in the city, good luck. If it doesn't meet their agenda, it isn't going to happen. So not only do we need to worry about the state, but we need to worry about our local officials as well. And that communication needs to be opened up. The state does not like to speak to our city managers here in Morgantown, due to our city manager in Morgantown. So hopefully that line of communication can be opened up as far as this area is concerned. In another area, you may have a city manager that's great, and county commission that just is not a business friendly. They don't want it. So we need to really work on communication, figure out what the state needs and what it wants, and hopefully get the community involvement as well. So everybody is on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Next up is Justin White. Go ahead, Justin.
Okay, great. This is a really great question. And this is something that's really important for us when we get to Charleston. This is something that we have to be thinking about. And these things are going to take time. So obviously the first thing that we're going to support, that I'm going to want to support, are the basics, the traditionals. We always have to be improving our infrastructure, our roadways, our roadway accesses. We've had a lot of good conversations on broadband. That is an absolute. We need broadband. With current trends in businesses, they want to be able to come to a community where they can also offer a lot of positions that are going to be work from home or certain circumstances. So that's an absolute requirement. Secondly, I want to continue to support business avenues that we already have available and business expansion avenues. And two examples of that would be the Morgantown Industrial Park, the Airport Business Park. Both of these places are being developed. They're open. They're ready to accept new businesses. They're ready to accept new industry that can come in and begin manufacturing. So support of all of these basic things are essential. But let me tell you what's probably, in my opinion, a little bit more important is supporting and promoting local education and job development programs. Since I've been running for office, I had a wonderful opportunity to get involved in a wonderful meeting with the State Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Board of Education, and got to learn about simulated work program. And here's someplace where West Virginia shines. If you can see, if you're not familiar with it, I strongly encourage you to get educated on what is going on and what our school system has done with simulated work program. When I learned about that, I got so excited about the avenues and the opportunities that exist, because what's going to attract businesses to West Virginia is a viable workforce. We must produce a viable workforce in our future generations. And what is going on with the simulated work program is tremendous. And it's a program that they've developed in our vocational schools. And I was given the opportunity to go meet with John Pollock and tour Monongalia VOTAC, look at their curriculum, see the classrooms, not only looking at the historical trades, but also the new avenues and the new technologies and the engineering programs they have and the law enforcement programs. These are things that are going to develop our future workforce that's going to want to bring companies here. But when you dive into the simulated work program, I get so excited about it because it allows the companies that we want to get here to get involved in the curriculum with the students. And it gives these students an avenue that they don't need to go to college, but they can get a good education out of high school and be prepared for a well-paying job. And that excites me. And it will get my utmost support throughout my process. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. All right, next up is Joe Statler. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, again, thank you. And Mr. White, I believe you've been looking at my notes as to what I was going to do and talk about. But I'll say that the first thing we have to do is look to see what the roadblocks are that is preventing and stopping people from wanting to come into this state to set up business. A lot of them has been mentioned tonight. You look at the business and inventory tax, it is a roadblock. But when you go to remove that tax, and you have counties and local boards of education depends highly on that tax. So we have to work through a process as to where we don't do harm in trying to do good. And we can do that. We just have not taken the time to really sit down and work it out with everybody before we go into session. The next thing that we have to do is, again, like Mr. White said, you have to have a willing, well-educated, drug-free workforce. People's not going to come into this state if they don't have the people in place to work on the jobs. Also, Mr. White mentioned that we looked at the Morgantown Industrial Park. That's a very exciting project that's going on out there. We have lots in Montague County area and North Central as a whole. We have lots of good developments that is taking place. But what we need is manufacturing jobs. We need to be able to sustain so that we can sell some of those blue jeans and those foods and everything else that we're doing. And that takes manufacturing jobs. One of the homebacks of that project, with about 300 acres to site, is an interchange there called the Harmony Grove Interchange. And I commend the developers working on that project to try and move all those roadblocks out of the way to get that moving forward. And that is one of the things that we really need to work hard on in this area, bringing jobs and businesses in. We got cracker plants that's going in Ohio and in Pennsylvania. We need the downstream jobs, and we've got to make that happen. We're not going to build a cracker plant in every state, but we certainly can capitalize on what the downstream jobs of it is. And by doing that, we got to start today. And whatever it takes, we've got to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Zach. Go ahead, Zach.
Thank you, Paul. I don't want to be echoing a lot of what everyone else is saying, because they're all great ideas. Justin, what you were saying with the simulated workplace, and with people being able to do jobs out of high school. Being a high school student, I have friends that are going to MTech, and they have their welder's license, they have their HVAC licenses, they have their technician licenses, and I have a friend that's going. He graduated from MTech a couple years ago, and he's now in California for underwater welding, which is it's not in West Virginia, but it does speak to the testament of how good these programs are. The business inventory tax rate and corporate rate is at 6.5% right now. It's the highest with our personal income tax. I believe that for new businesses that are coming into the state and people who want to expand, to lower that tax rate for maybe by 2 to 3% for the first 3, 4, 5 years, and then gradually increase that so that we can say, yes, West Virginia is open for business. We aren't going to put all these red tape restrictions for you to open your business, because we want you to come here. And broadband's another thing. Every business wants to market their goods online to people everywhere. Like Amazon. Just this day, I purchased something from Amazon. Without the broadband, we aren't going to be able to do that. We have to be able to make sure that roads are there so that we can ship things out via land and to get them to the airports via the air. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. We are on to question number 4. And I'm going to continue on. I don't know if Ethan's still back on here, but we'll switch moderators at some point.
Paula, 1 second before you switch over there. Paula's going to stay and be our moderator for the next question. Just so everyone knows, we've grown a little bit of a Facebook following on our page, and we're getting some comments and some questions. We've also got some fairly ugly people in there saying stupid things that just do not need to be said. And so while Paula is continuing to drive, Kyle and I are off on Facebook trying to fight the trolls. So please, if you're watching via Facebook, you're watching via YouTube, you're watching via Periscope, post your questions, be engaged, be active, but be positive. It's not a place to just distract and interrupt. So if you have a legitimate question, please post it. We'll get to the ones that we can. The ones that we can't, we apologize. But again, be patient with us because we're fighting the valiant fight of the trolls on Facebook right now. Paula's going to keep driving here with the questions. Candidates, you're doing a great job. We're right on time. We do have a couple legitimate questions that have come in. So save some of your creativity and your transparency for the end because we do have a couple public questions that have come in. Go ahead, Paula.
Thank you, Ethan. This is question number 4, and it is, what would be your number 1 legislative priority when elected? What would be the first bill you would submit to bill drafting and then introduce into the session? So for this, we're going to Mr. Wiley, please. Hold on.
Mr. Wiley.
I realize that, Ethan. Thank you. Sorry. I was trying to reverse the order a little bit because it looks like we had the same order as the last question, but I think I'm just going to go with it. Elijah, that would make you up next. So give me one more moment to unmute you. Go ahead, Elijah.
Okay, yes, my number 1 legislative priority is to represent the people in my district, listen to my constituents. And while I've been traveling throughout the district, talking to people, all the way up from Marshall down to Calhoun and over to Gilmer and in Mon County, 2 main things come up, the roads and broadband. I'm not going to beat that dead horse anymore, but, I would try to put a bill through that would address those issues. After a day in the mines, I attend online college. I'm trying to get a degree, and I have to go to the Mannington Public Library right after working all day. And I go into the library, I have an hour and I think 45 minutes on the timer. And I have to do my online college there because it's just not available to me. It's just a couple hundred yards down the road, but it's not up to my house. And I'm trying to better myself. I know I'm not the only person out there in West Virginia that would like to get a degree, that would like to expand on their education. And so I'm just one of thousands of West Virginians and businesses in the same boat. And so if we can address these issues, our economy will just naturally benefit from it. And so I'm not afraid of hard work. I love this state with all my heart. I'll give everything I can to protect what we have, our freedoms, our faith, our jobs, our people, while growing a business environment for future generations. And so my number 1 legislative priority when elected is to be a voice for the people in my district. If they call and have concerns and I can do something about it, I'm going to try my hardest to do something about it. So that's what I'm here to do. That's our job when we get elected, is to represent the people that elected us. So not to go down there and get rich off the state, not to go down there and be corrupt. It's to go down there and represent the people. So that's my number 1 priority.
Thank you, Elijah. Rebecca, same question. Thank you.
Yes, number 1, I would listen to the people, I would discern the needs, and I would serve the people. And when elected, what would be my first bill? We've spoken so much about highways, business, and all those things are so important about the broadband. But I think that unless my mind is changed between now and next January, when I would take office, I would want to introduce a bill on education that deals more greatly with preparing children in practical life skills, like the power of ethics, moral principles that govern a person's behavior, etc. I'd want to implement something where there would be greater understanding of civics, the study of duties and the rights of every citizen. I want them to understand the virtues of capitalism versus socialism. I want our children today to understand how they can have quality family and friend relationships They don't seem to understand that the suicide rate is so high with teenagers. I'd like to have classroom time in dealing with the issues that drive our children to medicating with opiates, of which we're #1 in the nation in West Virginia. And I'd like there to be solutions taught to personality weaknesses that develop into verbal, sexual, and physical abuses. I'd want to introduce a much greater emphasis on trade schools. I learned about that several months ago, and I fell in love with that as well as as Justin did. And so I want to see more happen with the children of West Virginia. We grew up free. We grew up able to walk the streets. We grew up enjoying our country and our state. And I want our future generations to learn that. So on our watch, I don't want that to go down the drain. I want to raise a generation that's powerful and that's strong. So I would want to work with education.
Thank you, Rebecca. Great answers. And John Probbins, you are up next.
Thank you. This was my favorite. I was born in West Virginia. I've lived in West Virginia all my life. Sometimes there was some picking and scratching to survive. But I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I've always stayed here. I'm torn between tourism and research and development for clean coal and carbon capture technology and rare earth minerals. You realize that China produces 95% of the rare earth minerals in the world. They've got us at gunpoint. There is one rare earth mineral facility in the United States. It's in California. I don't want to go in and take a lot of time, but West Virginia has a very, very, very great opportunity in rare earth metals because they have been concentrated in the coal residue that we've left behind, the things that the coal mines have left behind. So there's a study by a WVU professor that go out and look at. He calls it our next big opportunity. Clean coal technology and carbon capture to help ensure that our coal and our gas and our oil will keep West Virginia an energy producer into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Sorry about that, folks. Let me. Randy, you are up next. And Randy, if you give me a second, I want to read the question again for our audience in case anyone's joined us. What would be your first #1 legislative priority when elected? What would be the first bill you would submit to bill drafting and then introduce into the session?
Okay, thank you. This is an easy one. My priority is fight for my conservative values. They're very near and dear to my heart, and to fight to protect the unborn. I'm a passionate supporter of Right to Life because I have 4 adopted grandchildren, and it breaks my heart every time I think what could have happened to them. So but the first bill is a no-brainer. It'll be Randy's dream again, or roads bill. I'll probably have more than one. Usually I have 2 or 3, but the roads bill will be the first one that I will introduce again coming up if I get reelected in the next session.
Thank you, Randy. And next up is Todd Stainbrook. Go ahead, Todd.
Thank you. Well, if I was fortunate enough to get into the House, I got to watch a lot of the sessions that happened the first of the year. And one thing that was very clear was there was a lot of ugliness within the House. We have a very large bridge between Democrats and Republicans in the House. Making that bridge shorter, I think, only helps everyone. I can want to do a lot of different things in the House, but without cooperation, everything is 10 times more difficult. We have to get rid of the division. And there are a lot of corporations out there that try to make your work environment as pleasant as can be in order to get the most productivity out of you that they could or they can. And I think that's where we need to start. Each delegate is allotted 2 spots to put flags in front of them. And I think the only 2 flags that should be there is one for the state of West Virginia and one flag for the United States. We are here or there for the citizens of West Virginia. And we all in West Virginia are here to look out for every citizen in the United States. There is no other choice as far as I'm concerned. There needs to be no division when you walk into the House. We have differences of opinions. We need to come to the forefront in the entire country and show them how 2 different political views can become one just by working together. So to me, that's the first effort I think that needs done. So everybody can walk into the House with a positive attitude and try to get positive things done for our state, for the people of West Virginia, which is why we're there. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Next up is Mr. White. Go ahead, Justin.
Thank you. This is an important question, and we've got a lot of issues facing us, and we've got a lot of things that we need to work on. We have a lot of important legislation that needs to be passed, but we have a major roadblock here in West Virginia that we've got to focus on, and that's the opioid crisis. That affects every aspect of anything we've mentioned tonight, of anything we want to push forward, of anything we want to improve in our state. So many of those things are so negatively affected by the opioid crisis. And we've got to start focusing on that. I'd like to spend the next 10 months putting a comprehensive plan together using our health professionals, the experts from West Virginia School of Medicine, Marshall School of Medicine, law enforcement, other health professionals, mental health professionals, and put a plan together so we have a better understanding of what legislation is required to start making an improvement here. We have to understand that we are all affected by this. It affects our students. It affects our workforce. It affects our laborers. It affects absenteeism, both for small businesses and large businesses alike. It affects law enforcement and our first responders. Our law enforcement and our first responders are overwhelmed with dealing with this opioid crisis, and they need help. And we need to figure out how that we can help them get through this. We think about our insurance costs, our healthcare costs that are increasing for all of us due to theft, due to the misuse of the health system the way it is, overdoses, etc. We've got a serious problem on our hands. In West Virginia, we are one of the states that has the worst of the problem. And this impedes so many of the other things that we need to work on that we have to address this. And we have to address it now. And I'm going to take it upon myself to spend the next 10 months putting this plan together so that when we get there, we can draw from the professionals, the appropriate legislation to help us move forward to aggressively start addressing the opioid crisis. We need to not pass on to our future generations what we are being subjected to right now. And this is very near and dear and important to me. And it's a roadblock to accomplishing a lot of other goals. So that's where I'm going to be headed when I first get down there.
Thank you, Justin. Next is Joe Statler. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. This has been a very thought-provoking question, and I will tell you the reasons why. One, I don't think any of us on here tonight knows exactly what we will need in January because of the ever-changing and ongoing things that are happening around us now. So I will say if it was January tomorrow, my first bill is basically going to be going down there, and it's going to be broadband. I think if there's anything that this pandemic has brought out to us, it showed us the weakness that we have in our internet system, that we need a good, reliable, fast-speed internet system across the state, not just some areas. Some areas it's great in, and then you get into rural areas and you find out very quickly that the systems are not working. So I think that what you have to do as a state, we're going to have to put an emphasis on it that we have decided that we're going to bring this up to date, because I think some of the ever-changing work areas and habits that people has done throughout this pandemic is going to continue. I think you're going to see more work at home being done. I think you're going to see the education system probably start to use the home setting more than it has in the past in this. And simply to put it that right now, if you got 2 adults that's trying to work from home and 1 or 2 students, somebody's getting kicked off, or they're all getting kicked off the system because it's not enough there to sustain, and at least are working at a much slower pace. So I think we've got to put money, resources, and come up with a way to see what we need to do, whatever the technology is, because it changes as fast as what's going on now, to increase our broadband across the state of West Virginia.
Thank you, Joe. Lastly is Zach Lemaire. Go ahead, Zach, I've unmuted you.
Thank you, Paula. You know, like Joe said, we aren't going to exactly know what's going to be happening in January. The times are changing, and they're changing fast. You know, as we've all seen with the COVID-19 pandemic. You know, if my first day were to be tomorrow, the first bill that I would draft and propose would be a bill to abolish the graduated and progressive income tax system bracket, which has different, which for those of you that are uneducated on this, is it has different income brackets or ranges, and you pay a higher percentage of tax as you climb the ladder. Yeah, I don't think that's fair. You know, I want to bring it down to a flat rate of 4.25%. I got that flat rate of 4.25% with looking in the average West Virginia, when looking at the average, what the average West Virginian earns, and seeing what would bring us the most amount of income revenue without overburdening the people. You know, Rebecca Province mentioned stuff about suicide rates. You know, as a high school student, I can tell you I've lost several friends due to suicide. You know, we have to work on getting people the help they need. I yield.
Thank you, Zach. Next question. I believe yeah, and this is our last question, and then we'll have closing statements after that from everybody. We do have maybe one question that we'll follow up with it for a quick round that came from our viewers. So let me finish question 5. The legislative process is a deliberative one governed by rules and procedures. Being an effective legislator requires the ability to bridge divides and navigate the formal and informal processes involved. If you are an incumbent or past legislator, please tell us what committees you served on, how you were able to get a bill from drafting to the governor's desk. If you're a candidate that has never served, please describe how you'll be able to navigate this process and be effective. Perhaps you could give us some experience that you've had at the legislature to back that up. So I'm going to go to Justin first. Justin, I'm going to unmute you. There you go.
Am I there?
Yes, you are.
Great. Okay. Yeah, as a candidate, so I have a very multidisciplinary background. So as a small business owner, and particularly in my business, we do outdoor construction, landscaping, and maintenance. And I understand the concept of budgeting, job planning, job management, getting things done, getting projects done on time and within budget. Secondarily, my educational experience, my time in my graduate studies at West Virginia School of Medicine, also was a graduate assistant where I taught for many years in the School of Medicine. I've also had the pleasure to be adjunct faculty for the College of Business and Economics, teaching small business management and entrepreneurship. As well, during my postgraduate studies, I also did a minor concentration from the Masters of Public Administration in Healthcare Administration. And so that also gives me a good insight into the complexities of the healthcare system. Along with those postgraduate studies, I was also afforded the opportunity to do an executive internship at a very well-known hospital, and was able to learn a lot about the inner workings of the hospitals. And so I feel between my teaching, my education, my work experience, I have a very broad overview and a very broad understanding of a lot of different facets. And I think it's very important to be able to understand and manage a broader range of issues, particularly as a delegate. You have to manage and contend with a broad array of issues, a diverse array of issues on a regular basis. And I think that my education, my work experience, and my work ethic prepares me to be able to navigate through the system in Charleston. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. The next is Todd Stainbrook as a candidate. Todd, describe how you'll be able to navigate the process of the legislature.
Listen, learn, educate myself as much as possible, meet as many members as possible. That includes from both sides of the aisle. I've had an extensive background in business and finance, but I don't think there's anything that I could do to prepare myself to get to the legislation. I've spoke to several constituents who have contacted me about positions that they're interested in, bills that had gone through the House and gotten passed or not passed, and asked me what my opinion was of that result. I find that speaking to the people that the bill will affect the most, you learn the most from. So as much as I can talk to people and as much as I can reach out and as much as they are willing to reach out to me, I think that's where most of my education is going to come from. Speaking to gentlemen like Mr. Statler, who's been there, done this as often as possible, you can't miss. I spoke to several House of Delegates from the past, and they've helped me out quite a bit with what to expect. But honestly, until you're there, your guess is as good as mine. But I'm definitely willing to learn and listen, and you have to. And I think that my skills in negotiating will definitely come into play, especially with dealing with others from the other side of the aisle. But it will be interesting. I think it will be fun, and it'll definitely be one heck of an education. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Joe, this next is for you. And as you were a former delegate, tell us what committees that you served on and how you were able to get a bill drafted into the governor's desk, or tell us what you're anxious to be able to do when you get back to the legislature.
I will tell you that it's all about building relationships. And I would say that to everyone that goes down there. The first thing, you can't go down there, you've got to stand for your principles, but you've got to be willing to compromise, to work with all that's there. And I've proven that I can do that. I've proven that not only as a legislator, but going down on causes for the county and the community needs, and worked with people to get things done long before I was on the legislature. I will also tell you that one of the committees that I was very fortunate and would like to highlight is the first ever appointed chairman of the Fire and EMS. It was a committee through then Speaker Armstead that we formed because we realized throughout this state how important the volunteer fire companies and the EMSs are to us and how alarmingly fast we were losing. So we formed this committee. The first thing we done by working with the Senate and the House, we went on a statewide tour to go to places, to talk to the volunteer fire companies, to talk to the EMS squads, to see what their concerns and what their aspirations was, that what they needed to change so they could do the best of what can do. And I will tell you, I would send a big shout out to them now. The first responders are doing great throughout this, along with all the essential people that's had to go out and work. One of the bills that I was fortunate to work with on that was a Senate bill, 625, but it came out of that committee that we worked and we set up and we put that committee together. And as any bill goes and works through, it comes down to the Saturday night special, where it's just got minutes for changes that goes on. And I'll never forget this meeting in the speaker's office and him saying, what do we need to do to get this bill on final passage? And I named a couple things off that would have to happen. The gentleman representing the Senate came over and said, I'm looking for Mr. Statler. Here's what we're willing to do. If you will look at going away with this part of what the House is really strong in, and we will do this on the Senate side, we can get this bill to pass. We had an hour and a half to go. And I'll have to tell you, I probably done the biggest mistake I ever made. Standing right in front of the speaker, I never asked him what his thoughts was. I said, we will do it. Put my hand out, we made the deal and went on. Those are the type of relationships you have to build to make things happen down there. You've got to be able to work not only on your House side, but you've got to be able to work on the Senate side, to work with members and to listen to their concerns and try to get the best bill out that will help the state of West Virginia.
Joe, are you there still?
Can give you the committees I was on. I was chair of Fire and EMS, vice chair of education. So I served on roads and infrastructure, political subdivisions, energy, business and labor and agriculture. Set in on all those committees. Plus, when you're down there, I will tell you, you do yourself a disservice if you don't follow all the committees and try and go and sit in on some of those committee meetings so you know what's coming before you.
Did you mention any specific committee that you're interested in serving on again?
If when elected, I want to go back down, and the one that I've never served on is finance. I truly want to serve on finance. I'm passionate about education. I'd want to go back on to education, and I will tell you the truth, they can't pile enough on me as to where I can make a difference. I truly will do and work in any committee that I'm appointed to.
Thanks, Joe. Zach, you are up next, and having never served before, what is your impression of the challenges you'll face in the legislature?
I mean, having gone down as a high school student to observe as a page and just observe from the gallery. You know, I first went down when Joe Statler was a delegate in 2018. That's how I got involved in this whole realm of local politics. Since then, I've gone on to many great youth programs known as West Virginia Youth Leadership Association, Youth in Government. You know, that's it helped me to learn how to craft some semblance of a bill and, you know, edge it through both houses. But another thing that, you know, really cemented me being able to work with both sides of the aisle is, you know, I went to Boise State this past summer. It's just one of the biggest highlights in my life currently, where I served as the Senate Majority Leader. You know, I worked with the Boise State governor, the House, and the Senate Minority Leader. To bring bills that affected not only affect people at Boise State, but also things that would affect people at the entire state. You know, like many people have said, you know, I'm there to learn, I'm there to listen, you know, I'm there to make relationships. Are you?
Thank you, Zach. Next is Elijah. Same question, Elijah.
And I've heard it said that if you use not the minds of other men, you prove that you have no mind of your own. And I know that I have a lot to learn. And if I get down to the legislature and the state Senate, I'm going to go there with an open mind, like Mr. Stainbrook said, ready to listen, ready to learn, ready to work, and more importantly, ready to lead. You know I can't do anything by myself down there, but like Mr. Statler said, you gotta learn how to work with people. I'm not going to be focusing on how we disagree. I'm going to be focused on what we agree with and what can we do together to better the state. I'm flexible when it comes to working with others. It's not about me. It's about West Virginia. It's about the people that we represent. I'm looking forward, if I get the opportunity to work with others and to see what we can accomplish for this great state. I mean, we have a wonderful state here. I had a great life growing up. I want that for my kids. I know you guys want that for your kids, your grandkids. And if we work together and put aside all the issues that we might not agree with, but we get together, we can move this state forward. And, everything rises and falls with leadership. And so if elected, how I plan to navigate through that is just to listen, learn, and lead.
Thank you very much, Elijah. Mr. Provins, you are up.
Yeah, thank you. I happened to just sit and do the math real quick tonight and realized that I have been a Republican for 43 years now. And to finally get to the place where our party is in power is exciting. But anyway, the last 40 years, I've had to navigate everything I've done as a Republican in a pretty much democratic world. I've served on a lot of community organizations over the years that had to do with quality of life and economic development. I've been the vice president of the Marion County Convention and Visitors Bureau. I'm a past president of Main Street Fairmont and an active member today on Main Street Fairmont. I've worked in the corporate world. I've worked in the manufacturing world. I've negotiated deals sometimes in the millions of dollars. I've worked with large contractors, small businesses, and large businesses. Sometimes over the last 40 years, we faced some really tough times and wondered when the next job or order was going to come from. I grew up in a little coal mining town that was primarily Republican or was primarily Democrat, but still I had that entrepreneurial spirit in me that the Republican Party I saw was who backed that, is why I was GOP from the beginning. I had the best political science teacher in the world in high school. This lady taught me the mechanics and the pitfalls of state government. She gave me the ability to follow and understand the process, and I have over the years. I never dreamed I was going to be a politician, but at least I know what the roadblocks and the progress is. I was chosen by the state of West Virginia last year. I mentioned this earlier as Tourism Professional of the Year. So I really, really know the potential that's in our trails and streams and recreation and parks and all that kind of things, and need to push forward the marketing of that. I've had friends that's held legislative offices for years, and I still do. I've got friends in the Senate right now. I've got friends in the Senate caucus, and I'm sure that they're going to be a lot of help guiding me through the freshmanship in Charleston. And best of all, I would have the backing of the greatest constituents in the state of West Virginia. But thank you very much.
Rebecca, you are up next.
Thank you. I've spent all my life as a Republican. I can remember as 15 or 16 years old, helping my parents to campaign for different people running for governor, et cetera. I attended the first West Virginia GOP camp held, I think it was at Camp Caesar, if I remember right, and enjoyed it immensely. I would continue to educate myself as to how government works on the state level. And I would seek out expert advice from past and successful legislators which I've already done during this time. And Joe Sanders was Statler was one of the ones who helped me so much. I just appreciate the ones I've talked to. They have been so willing to pour into me, and I'm thankful for that. So I like seeking advice from those who have already gone before me, already paved the path, and I would continue to do that. I've spent 40 years building bridges with people. I love people. I love working together. I'm not an easily offended person at all, and I'm not dogmatic. I like understanding people. And so my intent when I went there would be to build bridges, not to put up walls, and not to create problems, but to reach out and do what's best for West Virginia. I'm looking forward for an opportunity to serve this state and to pay back the goodness that I've enjoyed while I've been living here. So I want that opportunity, and I pray that I have it. And so thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next up is Randy Smith, and please go ahead and tell us about the committees that you've served on in the past and the bill that you would want to get to drafted and onto the governor's desk.
All right, thank you. First of all, I want to say there's no way you could prepare yourself when you first get there, because you have no idea what you're getting into. I can remember I was in the coal mines. I got out at 4 o'clock on a Saturday evening, and I was sitting in the House chambers. I served in the House for 4 years at noon on Sunday, thinking, what in the world have I got myself into? So, and without the help of God, I couldn't have got through it, because I sure didn't know what I was doing. But that was 8 years ago. So, but I'm chair of the Energy Committee. That's one of the major committees, and GovOrg and Judiciary is my other 2 major committees. I'm also on the Agricultural Committee, Natural Resource, and Workforce. And one of the things I've learned being a chair of a committee is to bring all stakeholders. When you have a bill, you have some, especially in energy, because you have an environmental side, you have the company side, labor side, business side. I mean, there's just different DEP. And I bring everybody into my office. I have a conference table there, and we sit down and we hash it out. Sometimes it gets heated. Sometimes, we can work things out pretty easily. But, you have to learn to listen and respect everybody's opinion. Even though you don't agree on it, there's a lot of things I don't agree. And, it's kind of nice being in a majority, because you have the final say. So that helps, which I don't have that comfort at home. But, it just, you got to respect people's opinion, because everybody has a different opinion, and you have to learn to listen. And big thing Joe had mentioned is, it has to go through 2 houses. So you have to work with your counterpart on the House side. When I'm in the Senate, so I talk to Chairman Anderson and the Energy Chair on the House side, and making sure something that I send over to him is going to be something that him and his committee can live with, or, it's all for naught, because it's going to have to go through both houses. So, and, even reach out to the governor's office to see how they feel on it, and try to come up with something. So, but the main thing is learn respect, and don't take it personal. The bottom line is it's a job. I mean, you don't give up, your convictions, but you just have to respect people's opinions on everything. And I can't stress that to learn the rules. They go the parliamentary procedure. They go by Jefferson's rules, and learn the rules and the procedures, and it helps you out so much. But the main thing is just be respectful, and don't get caught up in the what goes on at the national level. There's a lot of Democrats that I'm real good friends with, and there's some Republicans I'm not real good friends with. So it's just a different opinions, and just take it that, just respect each other. That's the big thing. That's something we're losing in society as a whole.
Very good, and thank you, Senator Smith. Again, I'd like to welcome our viewers who've been watching via Facebook, YouTube Live, and Twitter on Periscope. We have fought the valiant fight there in the comments and tried to keep the trolls from being too offensive. And so Kyle and I have been busying ourselves with that, making sure that our stream is continuing to run. And obviously Paula acquitted herself quite well there with our last 2 or 3 questions. We've run over on our time. It's now 9:19. We've got through all of our questions. We do have one question that came in very early on Facebook before everything got heated and ugly there. And we do have time to ask it, but I'm going to ask, please, please, please limit yourself to a 1-minute response. The question is pretty cut and dry, and it'll be a 1-minute response. And I'm not going to try to be unfair to anyone, but literally at a minute, we'll just mute you and go to the next respondent. So we'll go in the order that we had for the first question. So for question 1, we went in a set order. And so first up will be Mr. Lemaire answering the following question. Are you in favor of having single member delegate districts? Why or why not?
While I would be in favor of the single member delegate districts, where each person has their own personal representative, I do see the various challenges which makes me to come against it. With gerrymandering is like it's the big it's the big boogaloo here. Pardon my political uncorrectness, but it's one of the things that we have to worry about. One of the things that I think that should happen is we should have 55 single county districts in the House, so that we have people from the counties, and we can't really pack certain parties and certain ethnicities into a single district.
Thank you. And next up is Mr. Justin White. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I'll answer pretty briefly. Yeah, I would support it because it gives more direct representation in a clear aspect of who your constituents are and who your representation are. I think if we look at what we have here in Mon County and Monongalia County, we see maybe an inaccurate skew of our representation. As Joe had said earlier, the west end of the county in some of the southern parts of the county are not necessarily equally represented. So yes, I would support it.
Thank you, Justin. Next up will be Joe Statler answering the same question. Go ahead, Joe.
Yes, I'm very much in favor of single member districts, and I will go to a different area, although I agree with some that's being said, is when you have to look at a budget of $65,000 to $80,000 to win a seat in the House, it's ridiculous. It's taking money out of the community that's not necessarily needs to be raised, because that's what's going to cost you to win a seat in the 51st district, the most expensive district in the state of West Virginia and possibly in the nation. So that will help to eliminate that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Next up will be Mr. Stainbrook answering the same question.
I am in support of the single member. And my answer is simple. I just feel that if someone knows their representative just more on a personal level or feels more comfortable with them being more local, I think it's a great thing. It opens up the avenues of communication, and there can't be anything negative with that. So.
Thank you, Todd. Next up, answering the same question, we're going to, although the question was originally posed just for the House 51 candidates, I'd also like to hear our Senate candidates respond to that, because to build a little bit upon what you may or may not know about civics, but districts for representatives are drawn each year after the census, and so whoever holds the House after this 2020 election will be the party that will determine if we do go to a single member district, and if we do, how the districts will be drawn and how the representatives will be chosen. They cannot be 55 counties. They have to be compact. They have to be as contiguous. They have to be compact, contiguous, contained in a single county. This is all from the West Virginia Constitution. You have to be compact, contiguous. They have to be as contained in the same county as possible, and they have to be within a certain variance in population. So unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to have just straight 55 delegate districts. We have to have a certain number of districts, 100 districts that all have a fairly equal number of representatives in each one. So I would like to have our Senate candidates address that, because it will be an issue that the legislature will have to take up. The next legislature, House and Senate, will have to take up, and that will be single member House districts and redistricting, a committee to redistrict. So we'll just go on here and let Mr. Provins answer, and then it'll be Provins, Polis, Smith, and Dean. So Mr. Provins, you
Not
are
something-
unmuted. You're unmuted there and ready to go.
Okay, thank you. It's definitely not something I've put any research into, but it looks like to me, right off the bat, it's going to be transparency and accountability. So I'm going to say yes, I'm for it.
Thank you. And now Mrs. Polis.
I haven't studied that either, but I liked what they said, more direct representation. We know them, they know us, there's greater communication, so it would result in greater effectiveness. So just from looking at the surface, I think it would be good. I would like to study it more.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Polis. And next up will be Senator Smith.
Yes, I'm for it. I voted for it. I think it's a good step forward because it gives everybody representation, sort of acts like the electoral college. Because let's take Mon County, for example. All your representatives now are right in the city of Morgantown. So the western end, eastern end, and them really don't have a representative because your majority of your voters are right in the city of Morgantown. So by splitting it up, your rural communities are going to have some representation. And I think it's a good thing. It's a check and balance. If we went to 55 counties, it'd be your county seats. Your delegates would probably more than likely come from your county seat because of the population wise. And then your outlying areas, your more conservative areas, it seems, wouldn't have the representation.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Smith. And last on this question will be Elijah Dean.
I am for it. And I, like the other candidates, I haven't done a lot of research on it, but I've talked to several people and they've explained it to me. And yes, I would be for that. I like where the people can get a better representation, a candidate that knows their situation, that knows what they're going through. You know, maybe there's some people live out in the country and their delegates right now are all from the city. I like having people properly represented. So yes, I would vote for that.
Very good. Thank you, Elijah. That's unfortunately it's 9:30. We had planned to keep you all on here just a couple hours. And so we're about 30 minutes over our time. So we're just going to go into our closing now. Every candidate will have 1 minute to address, just kind of give a wrap up. And, we'll kind of be not as strict on that, but please try to keep it to a minute. We'll blank our screen. I'll blank my screen. And when you see me pop back up, your minute's up. So wrap up the thought that you're on so that we can move on. With 9 or 10 people on the stream, we'll be done here by about 9:40, 9:45. So the order for that, sorry, I lost my notes here. We're going to go in reverse alphabetical order. So it'll be Justin White first and then Delegate Statler. So Mr. White, you are unmuted and you have the floor.
Okay, great. Thank you. I want to thank everybody who's been here tonight, all the candidates for participating. I think it's very important that we get together and we do these town halls and let people hear what we have to say. And again, I want to thank everybody who's tuned in and listened tonight and has learned from it. I just hope that you've learned that my diverse work experience and my past experiences do make me a well-rounded candidate. And I'm also someone who is at the point where I'm ready to commit myself and give back to the community. And I'm excited to do so. I'm excited for the opportunity. Again, my name is Justin White, and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Justin. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Next up is Joe Statler. Joe, give me just a minute to get you off mute. There you go, Joe. You have the floor.
I'd like to say to everyone out there that I'm a lifelong member of Montague County, and I've got a good public record on working with the community and the county on getting things across that's important to the county, and I will continue to do that. I would tell you that I've already have working relationships with the folks in Charleston, can step in today and start the job and even go into leadership roles that I was in before. And I'm willing to put in the time that takes to do the job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. We appreciate you joining us tonight and giving us your thoughtful answers. Next up will be Mr. Stainbrook. Todd, you have the floor.
Well, like they said, thank you for everybody watching. It has gone over a bit, so we appreciate your patience. And again, thank you to the committee for allowing us to get out there. I decided to run for House of Delegates because I don't care for our representation that is in Charleston now. We need some common sense. We need relationship builders. We need to stop the bickering in Charleston. And hopefully I can go down there and accomplish those things. So I'm asking for your vote in order to do that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Todd. We appreciate your time with us tonight and providing your answers. Next up will be Senator Randy Smith. Give me just a second, Randy, to get you off mute. Okay, Randy, you have the floor.
All right, first of all, I'd like to thank you for putting this on tonight and thank the people taking the time and the effort to watch it and trying to educate themselves on the candidates. I've been a lifelong resident of West Virginia. I have a strong conservative voting record, and I ask for your support to send me back to Charleston for the serve in the Senate. You can follow me on Randy E. as in Edward Smith on with WV on the Twitter, Randy E. Smith, WV Twitter, Randy E. Smith, my political Facebook page, or if you have questions or whatever, you can get on my personal page, Randy Smith on Facebook. And I have a website, randyesmith.com is my website. I've got an A+ rating from the NRA and the West Virginia Citizens Defense League, endorsed by West Virginia Business and Industry Council, West Virginia Chamber of Commerce, West Virginia Farm Bureau, West Virginia Coal Association, West Virginians for Life. And with that, God bless you and thanks again.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Smith, for your time tonight answering questions and for your service in both the House and now in the Senate. We appreciate it. Next up, answering this question will be, or providing their closing, will be Mr. John Provins. John, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Like I said, I've been born in West Virginia. I've lived in West Virginia all my life. I've looked at our assets and our potential that's been ignored for 40 years, some of it, and some new potentials that just came up in the last few years. I would really, really like to have the opportunity to put forth the ideas and work more for research and development, like I said before, in clean coal technology and rare earth metals. We have so much potential there to compete on a world market and make good, high-paying jobs. We've got some great engineering companies in this state to do with automation and robotics and material handling that can grow given the right atmosphere, and tourism. We need to get more of those people stopping and enjoying the good life of wild, wonderful West Virginia and not carrying all those dollars to Florida and the beach. So thank you very much. Vote for me in the primary.
Very good. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Provins. It does appear as though, oh no, I hadn't missed someone. I have Polis next. Rebecca Polis, let me get you unmuted. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Thank you very much for doing this. It's been a real blessing to hear everybody else, and it's been an education. So thank you again. I am a voice for values, and I look forward to being able to serve in the legislature, and I look forward to serving particularly in places of education. I would like to see education that elevates our students today and gives them a stronger foundation to face the future. I'm also very much for training women in non-traditional roles. I'm very much into more proven rehabilitation for opioid addictions, and also for less expensive but thoroughly vetted adoption programs. And so I would love the opportunity to serve, and I pray that you will vote for me, a vote for values in this coming primary. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, thank you, Rebecca. We appreciate that. Next up, we will have Zach Lemaire. 1 second, Zach. There you go. You have the floor.
Thank you, Ethan. I just want to echo everyone in thanking the committee for putting this together during this COVID-19 crisis. We aren't able to get out and shake your hands, is what I would like to do. You know, one of the reasons why I ran for the House, like Mr. Stainbrook says, I don't care for the people. I don't care for the people down there in Charleston right now. You know, they're causing, some of them are causing a bit of ruckus, and I frankly don't agree with them. You know, I hope to, as a member of the youngest generation, I hope to bring that unique and what I believe is a much needed alternative perspectives, which is the youth side on the issues that face our community and our state. You know, if you want to reach out, you can reach out to me on Instagram and Twitter at Lemaire, Lemaire, the number 4 Liberty. My Facebook page, Lemaire, again, that's Lemaire, the number 4 WV. My personal Facebook, that's Zach Lemaire. Or you can reach out to my website, which is LemaireForLiberty.com.
Thank you, Zach. We appreciate you joining us tonight and providing your answers to our questions. And last but not least will be Elijah Dean. Go ahead and unmute Elijah. There you go. You have the.
I'd like to thank the Monongalia County Republican Executive Committee for putting this on, because this is truly a blessing to have this venue where we can get our voice out and people can see us and follow us. I just want to say I'm a pro-faith, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, and pro-fossil fuel candidate. I have conservative family values, and I will work for the people in District 2. Now, I'm a Christian coal miner. I've been in the mines since 2012. I live in a small town of Metz, West Virginia, and I have a passion to preserve and protect our freedoms that we all hold dear. You know, I was raised with family all around. You know, my grandparents are down the road. I had cousins, aunts and uncles, and I have a desire to build an economy and business environment that will ignite expansion from within and attract investment from without. And I don't want my kids, I don't want your kids, all of this next generation to have to leave this state to find a good paying job. You know, being a union coal miner, you know, I know what it's like to go to work. I know and understand what the working class people go through and what is truly important to District 2 people. I just like to thank you so much, and please consider voting for me, Elijah Dean, State Senate, District 2. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Dean, and thank you for joining us tonight and sharing your answers to our questions and bearing with us through our little technology glitch in the beginning. Again, to all of our candidates, thank you for joining us. As a service to you, our candidates, we have spent time building out our website and providing links to your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, your website, your email, your phone. There are many ways that constituents can reach you via our website, and that website is www.moncounty.gop.org. That's MON County, COUNTY, GOP.org. So there are lots of ways for candidates to, for voters to reach their candidates and learn more about the candidates from our website. You can find us on our Facebook page. You're probably watching this stream via that format now. Again, it's moncountygop.org. That's our website. You can link there to our Facebook or Twitter. Send us an email. We want to do everything we can as a committee to support these candidates who are brave enough to put their hat in the ring, you know, to step into that arena and offer to serve. We do believe that we elect delegates and senators to be public servants. They're servant leaders. They're there to represent our voice. And so as a committee representing the Republicans of Montague County, we were honored to be able to offer this service to you all so you could get your voice out. And we appreciate your time, your thoughtful responses, your answers to our questions. And to our viewers tonight, we certainly do appreciate you joining us. We're going to do just one last thing. I'll leave everyone on mute, but if you'll pop on your screen, we'll just wave. Thanks to everybody for joining us. And with that, we'll end the meeting and end our live stream. And thanks everyone. And we'll see you Thursday for executive branch offices in a virtual town hall. Thank you.